Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I just want to pick out a few comments from the chat already because I can see some lovely human beings there. But Eleanor in the chat says, "Woohoo! First live webinar. I've been watching recordings up until now." So, Eleanor, this is for you. Big hello and welcome. And then also Erica, who's a regular at our webinars, says it's 34 degrees in Cape Town today. Colour the rest of us very jealous. So thank you. It is miserable outside my office right now, but it's so lovely to see you here today. If you haven't already, do drop in the chat where you're watching from, just like Rachel, Amy, so many more, Anne-Marie, Perva, Anna, Alex, Michelle. It's so lovely to see you all here today. And if you haven't already, do switch your messages to everyone so everyone can see your messages. We've got Emily over in Atlanta, which is amazing. So all you need to do to switch your messages so everyone can see it, head into your chat feature, as many of you have already, and you'll see a little toggle. If that presently says hosts and panelists, switch that over to everyone so everyone can see. And just like Al has nailed it in Walton-on-Thames, then there you go. Everyone can see your messages, which is so lovely. Today we have just someone like Rita is a new friend, but is someone who immediately just like feels, whether it's a written word or a screen, full of energy and positive vibes and just so much humility and humanity. I've really enjoyed a very short series of interactions with Rita over a past couple of months. Rita is the head of academy over at SEMrush, but today just comes as like a wicked human being, and is today going to be speaking about burnout, which is like one of those so prescient issues in marketing. There's some stats which point to 70% of marketers reporting burnout in the past 12 months. It almost doesn't matter what the specific number is. What it means is that there's a lot of folks out there who feel this way. And today we're going to explore this with someone who encapsulates warmth itself. If you have questions as today's session goes on, please do pop them in the Q&A. That's found down below in your little Zoom window. We've got Rachel just saying she's a wicked human being and she's in Vienna right now. So jealous about Rita. Do pop your questions in the Q&A as we go out through today's session. A last couple of things for me before we get going properly. So the first is to say thank you to our featured sponsor this week, who are Planable. Now, Planable are a content and social media scheduling platform. They're the ones that we use at the Marketing Meetup. And right now, or on Thursday rather, they're going to be running a webinar with TMM favourite Sophie Miller, all about building successful and growing successful agencies in 2025. So if you'd like to be part of that, we'll pop it in the follow-up email. There's a link right there too. Also, a big thank you to Frontify, Storyblock, Cambridge Marketing College, Redgate, and ScoreApp. They're fabulous and need a lot of praise and support for supporting our community. They're the reason why we can keep on bringing these sessions to you. With all that said, now is the time to pass over to Rita. So Rita, thank you for being such a legend.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me and for those very kind words. You almost made me start crying, and I haven't even started telling my story. So,
I don't want to do that. So,
yeah,
thank you.
in a good way, in a good way. No, thank you so much for having me. And I was telling Joe earlier, I'm grateful to be here with all of you, but I'm also grateful for the opportunity to tell this story. Because if anyone in this audience has suffered from burnout, at least like this particular episode of burnout for me was quite significant in my career. It's something that I have revisited time and time again in actual journals and diaries, some of which I will actually share as part of my presentation. But I hadn't really sat down to sort of put it together in a full story. So that's what I did for today. And I hope you all not just enjoy it, but maybe you see a little bit of your own experience in it. And I would love your comments and feedback in the chat. I'm watching it right now, so I'll try to also react to your comments and suggestions as I'm going through the slides. So first, let me share those. And just go full screen.
Got it. That looks
Wonderful.
perfect.
Okay, I actually cannot see the chat right now, so Joe, just interrupt me if like
Cool.
something comes in and like that I should clarify or dig a little bit deeper into. But okay, so hi, I am Rita. I'm so happy to be here. So nice to meet everyone. I love this picture of me. It's very sort of happy and optimistic. A little bit about myself. I'm actually from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I don't know if there's anyone from San Juan in the chat, like, hola, huepa. I'm very proud to be from the Caribbean. It's a core part of who I am. I did meet an Austrian when I went to business school in Virginia and ended up marrying said wonderful Austrian. And this is why I live in Vienna, Austria. And we have two hilarious, overwhelming, amazing children. And then the last thing is that I love my job. I've been in marketing for quite a long time. I was very lucky to stumble upon this industry and this career right out of college. And it was just like love at first sight from the beginning. And in fact, I love my job so much that like it really has gotten me into trouble in the past. So this picture, which I had for this presentation, I had to troll my iPhone and I just like I had to like bug my husband to get all the passwords to like these iCloud accounts to get all the old pictures from back in like the earlier 2000s. But this is actually my last day at a company called Zillow, which is a very large, actually the largest online real estate brand in the US. And I worked there for 4 years. I will tell you the story of my sort of progression in that company. But this picture I took on the last day, my last day in that company. And this, what you see here, is a Puget Sound. It's a beautiful view. And I know that it looks amazing. You can't really see my face here. And even though it feels like a very inspirational, beautiful moment, it actually wasn't. Like I was not in a good place when I took this picture. Funny enough, in my photo roll in my iPhone, this picture shows up like just a week before I quit Zillow. I was going through just a very difficult time. Some of the symptoms that I experienced that I can speak about now with lightness, but at the time were certainly not a topic of lightness for me. I was losing hair, which I have very thin hair. I don't know if you can see. I mean, I do a lot of volumizing, but like my hair is very thin. So at the time, this was like quite tragic for me. I would find myself crying all the time. Like I would be like walking to work, which I did every morning, and suddenly I would just start crying, and I just couldn't control. I couldn't control it. I wasn't sleeping well, and I think the worst symptom for me was that I was overwhelmed with a kind of like doom and gloom negativity about my job, which is incredibly uncharacteristic. Like anyone that knows me, it's like I have this sweater behind me. I'm like sunshine yellow person, eternally optimistic. So I had become a different person, which is why I ended up quitting this job. So I want to tell you the story of how that happened to me, how I went from like the very top of my career to really feeling at the very rock bottom of it in a matter of 4 years, and the lessons that I've learned and the things that I've reflected on almost a decade after that happened to me. So I have to take you back to 2016, all the way back in the little time machine. So I graduated from an MBA program where I met my wonderful husband, and we decided to do long distance. So I moved to New York City and started work there. My husband moved to Seattle. And at some point, this long distance became very annoying. And we made like an Excel list of like all the things that we did in Seattle and all the things we did in New York. And we realized that actually all I did in New York was spend money on brunch. So we decided actually, you know what, Seattle is a better place. Like we're out in nature a lot. We're doing a lot of like things that don't involve spending money on Eggs Benedict. So let's just relocate. Let's just do Seattle. So I was randomly looking for jobs, just applying, honestly, like very mindlessly, like applying. And I got an interview and ultimately a job at this company called Zillow. So at the time that I joined Zillow, it was a very tiny company of like maybe 500 employees. And I was the first B2B digital marketing hire. So there were some pieces in place for B2B marketing, but like it was like green space for me. I had the opportunity to build this thing from the ground up. The team was super smart, very creative, weird in the ways that I am weird, in that we could just like talk about black holes at like 9 p.m. on a Friday night and then go have a beer in the corner. It was a lot of fun. So I joined at a period where my work was supporting this product that you see here called Premier Agent. This was the B2B product that Zillow sold, also the primary source of their revenue. And so the product is basically an advertising product that is sold to real estate agents in the US. So that was my product. I was the main person that was marketing this product. And you can see here, like in the time that I was leading this team, which is like 2016, it was experiencing the highest revenue growth. It was like peak for that product. And of course, there were many things that were influencing the growth of this product, but I had something to do with it. I would never say that it was me. Of course, it was not me. It was, as I said, a very, very talented, driven team of people. And the product and the brand were amazing. But all the changes that we made in the marketing organization, we just built like an incredible like lead generation machine. So this line that you see right here this is actually I pulled from a presentation that I did back in 2016. You can see like when I joined in 2013, this was the marketing driven revenue that was attributed to us. And then by 2016, that thing had skyrocketed like almost in parallel of, as you can see with the Premier Agent growth. So marketing became like a huge driver of revenue. So I was like super successful and I felt so good about it. I felt amazed. Like this little pictures you see, like I felt really proud and really good about my work. So things just were going great. Like I felt for the first time in my life, like I had been very burdened by imposter syndrome early in my career. I now felt that I had worked at enough places that I could really feel confident about my knowledge in marketing. Like I could show up at a meeting and not feel like, oh my God, why do I have this job? Like I knew my place in that meeting. I started showing up in random lists of like follow Rita. She's a marketer to follow, even though I wasn't posting anything online. I was just like doing a really good job and networking with a lot of people. So it really felt like I was, oh, okay, sorry. I meant to mute that. But in addition to all the sort of work stuff, like I was just having so much fun at work. This is the 2016 Zillow talent show, and I choreographed this entire presentation and we won the talent show. I just have to wait until you see this. Look at how cool this was. This was my team. And so not only were we like crushing it, but we were having so much fun at work. It was amazing. So like when I look back at those first years at Zillow, it really felt like I was like flying, like these beautiful seagulls in maybe the Puget Sound. Like it really felt that way that I was like invincible. I could do anything. And I also kind of felt like a rock star, honestly. Like I was able to like walk into a meeting and people would actually listen to what I had to say. Like I was a trusted source of like marketing wisdom and knowledge, and I felt great. I thought I had achieved like a really high degree of self-confidence. And then all of this, like my happiness, my joy, my success, all of this led to me being promoted to director in 3 years. So I was promoted every year. And in the third year, I became director. And I don't know how you all feel about the term director, but like to me, it felt different. Like I somehow suddenly felt like, oh my God, like I'm like, that's like really serious now. Like I'm like director now. I'm not like a senior manager. I'm not a manager. I'm a director. There was a certain type of heaviness that I felt, or like a sense of urgency, responsibility that I felt came with that title that didn't come with previous promotions. And so, I like that. I felt a little bit like I went from like this the Pooh to like fancy Winnie the Pooh. Like I was suddenly in a different level and needed to operate differently. And I picked this meme too because I felt like you could see that there's a change in the facial expression of Winnie the Pooh. And I think he looks a little smug. I certainly don't feel like I was smug, but there was a change in me that I felt from that promotion. Call it urgency, call it like a need to prove that I deserved it, that I really was worthy of that title. Um, so it felt like, in essence, for me at that point, that success in this role was really not optional. I was given all this trust to like build out this entire like new team, and I didn't want to fail. And the job was very big, and I did not want to fail. So this started a process that I actually pulled this at the actual symptoms of burnout, but they really, for me, this was exactly the path that I followed. Number one being like my promotion to director led to this like urgent need that I felt to prove myself. And the tasks that were in front of me were not easy. They weren't like change this landing page or send 10 emails. They were restructure an entire team, like make these two teams that don't collaborate with each other not only work together, but work together effectively. They were big, sort of like tectonic shifts that I had to make in this role. So I did what I had always done, which is to work harder. So every time I wasn't meeting expectations or I felt like I wasn't doing good enough, I would just put in more time and more time and more time, ultimately neglecting my needs. Like it affected my personal mental health. It most certainly affected my relationship with my husband and with my friends who were like, "Where are you? We're at karaoke." And I'm like, "I'm in the office. I have to figure out how to fix this entire company." I felt like the picture that I shared very early, like at that point, I definitely was feeling like I just was not myself at all. I was a very different person, not optimistic, not sunny, um, felt empty, despair. And then for sure, I reached number 12, which is the total burnout, which is where I sort of like circle back to this picture, which is where I started. This is like 1 year in, only 1 year into my director job, I quit because honestly, I didn't know what else to do. And I've revisited this many times if this was the right choice, because as I said, like I loved this company and I loved my job. So quitting was a really difficult decision for me, but I still stand by it because I think at that point, I'm not sure that I could have sort of un taken myself back from the edge of this like crisis without physical distance from this office. So what caused this? What did it? This is again the product of like almost a decade of reflection. So I would be curious also to hear what your all your experiences is with burnout for those of you who have unfortunately experienced it. But there's a part of my burnout that was definitely not me in my mind. That was definitely marketing. And Joe, you mentioned this before, the sort of terrible stats that we're seeing about 70% of marketers experiencing burnout. This industry is hard. And there have been many changes that have happened, shifts that have made it, in some ways, more interesting. There's a lot more opportunity, I think, for marketers today than when you think back to like, Mad Men, Madison Avenue, 1950s advertising agencies. But some of these changes are quite hard, can be very hard on mental health. I think the first one is that marketing is an always on job now. In the past, like you would show up in an office and leave and go home. And now, especially people who do social media management, this job can follow you at home. It can be with you at all times. And it's very difficult oftentimes, I think, for marketers to separate your life from your work, especially now that a lot of us or many of us work remotely. I think the other thing that I think a lot about is the fact that in the past, marketing was a field that was not really measurable. People would plan amazing advertising campaigns, and yes, at least in the US, there were these Nielsen things that you had on the television sets, and they could measure kind of how they did, but you weren't able to really measure things at a very granular level. And of course, now we do. You can measure every click, every impression, every interaction. And so while this adds a lot of value to the work that we do, it also means that in certain circumstances, particularly when things are not going well, marketers are constantly trying to justify their existence. Like we're in a place where we have to leverage and use data as a way to prove our value within an organization, and oftentimes prove it again, and then do it again, and then one more time. And in my mind, like attribution models, of course, serve their purpose, but they could also be like quite like leaders of overwork in my mind. And then the third thing that I would say is this complexity, like of being always on, of this plethora of channels that feels like it's expanding constantly, of all this data and like everything being able to be measured has led to a sure disconnect between the work that marketers do and the C-suite, like leadership in a company. And when you look at those stats, they're like quite impressive too, that there's very few CEOs with actual marketing experience. And for even those who have marketing experience, there's a massive like disconnect of like what marketing is in the organization? Are we brand stewards? Are we digital growth drivers? Are we Salesforce enablers? Like relationship and all of these different things that you see in this diagram, there's like a lot of miscommunication about. So CEOs and CMOs are not always on the same page. And I certainly have experienced that in the past where the person that I was reporting to at the time and the people that I've reported to in the past don't have a strong alignment or understanding of the role of marketing within the organization. And that role keeps shifting. So that makes our jobs as marketers quite hard. I would say that my burnout was not just though like marketing. I cannot blame marketing for my burnout. I will also not blame Zillow or anyone that like managed me or was in my team. There was a huge component that really was me. It really was. And I say this kindly, but it really was me. So this is a picture of my family. Both my parents came from Cuba. They moved to Puerto Rico when when the revolution happened in Cuba. And they started from zero, both of my parents. So I was raised within a household where good grades and achievement were not an option. They were, I must do this. And from a very young age, I felt that I wanted to do work that would almost justify my parents' sacrifice in me. So I felt like from a very, very young age that success was really kind of the way that I achieved love in my life. It's the way that like I achieve connection with other people. I achieved more, I am loved more. And my parents were not intentional about this, obviously. I'm a mother now, and I'm sure that a lot of the things that I do and say will be sort of interpreted and taken differently by my children. So there's no judgment to my parents here, but I certainly as a young girl from the very like elementary school level. Like I equated achievement with love. And then I equated hard work with achievement. So it's almost like, you know, you can do the, what is that, transactional like rule or whatever, but like these two formulas like really drove a lot of my career success in many ways, but there's a fundamental problem with them that I think was kind of at the core of a lot of what I experienced at Zillow. So I said at the beginning that this was a diary. So like Joe, I told you before the session, I do a lot of journaling, not consistently, but when I'm not feeling well, I will just like write down what I'm feeling because I think it helps me clarify my thoughts. So I pulled all my journals from like when I, you know, quit Zillow and around that time when I was experiencing burnout. And I think this one says, I really like to perform and I can't help it. The problem is when I get my happiness from external factors, that's not cool. Okay, I'm going to go to bed. That's probably what I need to that's probably what I need to do to feel better, something like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of truth in this little paragraph for me, at least. Like, I most certainly like to perform, and it's taken me a very long time to sort of like disassociate, like my love for performance from a theatrical standpoint, and my love for performance because I love people thinking that I'm great. And that has been a journey that can be a separate webinar, but I'm not sure that we want to go into that. But I realized, like, upon reflecting on this episode, that man, like, so much of my self-worth was pinned to my success and my productivity. So me not being able to succeed as a director was not just about, well, I was not unable to do it, and now I'm moving on. I felt like I was a fundamentally flawed human because I wasn't able to succeed, which made it so I would just continue to work harder and take on more tasks because I needed to succeed, not just in order for Zillow to succeed as a business. I actually needed to succeed so that I could feel good about myself. And this is quite problematic. As you can see, this is another page from my journal. I don't know what it says in the very top. I think it says something similar. It says, since my sense of self-worth is pinned to my productivity, suddenly I cannot have an unproductive day, or I think I'm a terrible person. So you can see in this graph, it's, you know, I put like, this is my sense of self-worth, and these are the tasks that are completed. And it's like a bell curve. Like I complete a lot of tasks, I feel great, I feel great, I feel great, I'll feel great. And then there's so many tasks, and the task becomes so heavy that I can't complete it. And then I cannot complete them physically. There's not enough time in the day. Then suddenly my sense of self-worth would decline, like as you see in this little bell curve. So okay, the other part of my personality, which maybe some of you can also relate to, is that I feel like I'm very much a Labrador retriever. Like I just love ideas. You can convince if you come to me with like any kind of energy for anything, I will sign up to do it with you. Like this is like my Achilles heel. Like I will do it. It doesn't matter what the idea is. I just want to be part of it and I just want to have fun. So, this is not great. Like you have someone who is like a Labrador and you combine that with this sort of not just like penchant for achievement, but kind of like a need for achievement as a matter of like self-definition and self-worth. And I would say that I'm just like a prime candidate for burnout, like really just like primo candidate for burnout. Um, okay, so here's what I have learned from that. Like marketing, there's some things about marketing that lead to burnout. There's some things that I myself like have had to work on that lead to burnout. And these are the things. So
Rita,
yeah,
before you carry on there, I don't do this
yeah.
often, but like one of the things is that you can't see the chat feature, and you're speaking about the need for achievement, and I don't want to feed that
No,
urge,
please. No, I
but
can't see it. So yeah,
I
please.
I just wanted to say that this is so fantastic, and yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I just say how appreciative we are of you sharing this. So it can feel like speaking into a black hole sometimes if you can't see the chat feature. So I just wanted to say that the
Thank you
resonance
all. That means a lot. I'm trying not to cry. I'm a crier. Sorry. I'm a Labrador who's also a crier. I'm a crying Labrador retriever. No, I'm glad that other people feel this way. I think that many of us feel this way and maybe we just don't talk about it enough.
That's it. I agree.
Um,
I fully agree.
so
I'm a crier too, so like we could both cry
oh
on
my
on here.
God.
But I didn't want to interrupt your flow too much, but I just wanted to, as you head into this next section, I just wanted to say thank you because it's
Yes.
gorgeous, so it's really appreciated.
Yes, as I said, I'm just grateful to be able to tell this story because I actually have never told it in this way. I've told it with like, in hysterics at my husband many times, but never in a sort of linear, more calm way. Okay, so things that I work on this daily. Like I am not out of the woods when it comes to burnout. By far not. Like I think I'm at a place, I don't know if you've ever heard that story of like, the progression of I feel it's getting better at something, but at first you fall into a hole and you don't even know you fell. Then you fall into the hole and you learn how to get out. And then eventually like the ultimate thing is that you see the hole and you just don't fall into it. I feel like I'm still falling into the hole sometimes. So this is not said as like from the perspective of someone who has figured out how to manage this. Like it's a daily practice for me. The first thing is rethinking what productivity is. Like we live in this world where productivity is equals like I got all of my to-do list done. I managed to sort of like control my job. This uncontrollable situation, I managed to somehow rein it in and do all of these things. And one thing that I did not do when I was promoted to my fancy director title is that I never, whenever I had any kind of downtime, I felt so guilty because I felt like I was being unproductive. So I was constantly trying to do more things when actually, if I could go back in time, what I should have done, what I wish I had done was to really stop and take a step back and really allow myself the opportunity to think. I think that like a lot of marketers right now, myself included, feel guilty about thinking, about just sitting and think of like all those scenes if you've ever watched Mad Men, how much time those marketers spend alone in an office just thinking. And we're in this like daily publishing schedule where we have to also send the email and also do the webinar and record that video and do that podcast. There's so much activity that I think we can do a lot to avoid burnout by just thinking a little bit more and then identifying the things that actually matter. So um, I also think that we also don't talk about this enough, or I certainly don't. There's a big difference between being an individual contributor that is crushing it and managing a team. And I think as you rise up in organization, you are tackling bigger challenges and doing more work, like being more active in like task-oriented work will not necessarily mean more success in those roles. So it's another thing that I think about. The second thing I think about is rethinking my confidence and where it comes from. I think probably the biggest thing that came out of that experience for me is realizing that I always thought I was an incredibly confident person. I really did because I can go to a meeting and present really well. And I thought, okay, I'm really confident. And people would tell me, you're really confident. But I will tell you, I was not confident. I mean, I'm still in this journey. In many ways, I'm still not confident. My self-worth is still not fully driven by what's inside. But at that time, it was like in very shaky ground. This is part of my job was like doing this big conference in Vegas. So this is me in like full burnout, but you can see me there. It's like I look very confident, but I was not well. But the ground that my self-confidence stood on at that point was fully on other people's opinions, how much success I was having, the applause, like metaphorical or not that I was getting, whether or not I was promoted. And this is dangerous, right? Because if your sense of self-worth is like pinned to other people, then you will always take on more work. You will always do the thing that's going to get you the applause, even if that thing is ultimately not great for you or will lead to burnout. The best way that I like to describe it, and I actually think this comes from my husband, that he says like I was almost like if you are managing stock, you're like the CEO of a company and your stock is at the very peak. What if you thought your company is awesome when the stock is at the peak, and then when the stock goes down, you're like, my company sucks. Like you would never be able to manage that company. And that's kind of how I always felt. Like I'm being praised, like all my projects are doing well. I'm amazing. Oh my God, my projects are not working. I can't fix this. This is a really big problem. I'm not amazing. I actually suck. That's kind of where my mind went. And it's like what I work on, honestly, on a daily basis to know. I don't even know why I put this picture in here. Now I can't remember. But I on a daily basis, seriously, I work on understanding or analyzing myself, like when I am reacting to something because I'm feeling like I need to impress someone, or when I'm doing something because I genuinely want to. And I work on like building this like self-confidence that is so strong that it feels more than a poncho. It feels like a knight's armor, where I could be running a company that is like everything is, in chaos, exploding and not working. And I can very calmly look at the situation and say, well, let's try these other things. But it's not about me. It doesn't define me. It's just the situation is hard. It's not me. And then lastly, I would say like the role of work. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but when I moved to Seattle, my work was everything. I moved there with no connections. So all my friends were from work. Like everything sort of revolved around my social life. Everything was around my job. And then when I left that job, I was like, oh my God, I have nothing here. I have nothing left in Seattle. I realized the importance of building community, not just in work, but outside, and investing in yourself outside of your job. I will forever like care. Oh, the picture is gone. That was me covering my children and my husband's faces. Maybe it's like in the smaller. Oh, okay. I will add it later. Oh, here it is. Okay, here it is. So since Zillow, which was something that I was very afraid of doing, but I decided to like move in the direction of like building a family and like investing very heavily, emotionally, financially, from a time perspective, in other aspects of my life, to sort of remove the pressure that this job or what I do for a living needs to define me in this like really big way. It still does. I'm not saying that your job is not important. We spend a lot of time at work, so I really care about my job, but I care about a lot of other things too, and I'm very mindful on like how much time I spend at work versus building like community, both like within my house with my children and my husband, but also outside in Vienna where I live, and I'm still struggling to learn German. So, that's a whole other topic. So I focus really on like this is like the last, and I hope this is not too cheesy for everyone, but like it really is the truth for me of like how my sort of strategies for not being a burnt out marketer. The first one is to be freaking courageous. Because you know what? It takes courage to tell your manager, listen, this is unrealistic. Let's talk about how we can prioritize this for a future time, or how we can like extend the timeline, or whatever it is. It takes courage to take a step back, and it takes courage to like not fully freak out when like things are not going well in a job. I think it also takes courage to pursue and prioritize the work that you find playful and fun, because that work is not necessarily the work that's going to lead to a promotion or lead to other people to more money or lead to other people being like, you're amazing. But I've been, since my burnout episode, not immediately after, because it took me 2 or 3 years actually to get back on my feet. But I'm very intentional about spending a lot of time doing the things that feel fun. Um, I I prioritize self-awareness. So I'm still a Labrador, but this Labrador is no longer playing with a stick. It's like sitting on grass, which means that it's reflective and it's thinking before it leaps. So I try to be very mindful of, because as I said, I will take on a lot and I'm very excited about everything. So when I start taking on too much and work starts to feel very heavy, I tone it back. So it's almost, for me, it's almost like a radio dial that I have developed in my brain where I'm like, love it, more work, love it. This is so much fun. And then suddenly it's like, oh my God, I can't do it. I'm so stressed. I can't sleep. And I know I need to sort of tune that radio dial. So it's not like a hard boundary for me. It's like a tuning thing that I'm constantly working on. So there's some, I'm sure you have your own clues, but for me, I'm a big reader of fiction. So when I can't read fiction, I have a problem that I need to tone back, because it means my brain is all over the place. So learning the signals. And then finally, this idea of like working on real confidence that like really comes from inside me and not from like external factors. And I'll end with this, which is a great like book that I recently discovered. It's called Meditations for Mortals, but Oliver Berkman says, quote, or perhaps you're tethered your self-esteem to the most crazy making standard of all, realizing your full potential, which means you'll never get to rest, because how can you ever be sure there's not a little more potential left to realize? This like really speaks to me both at work but in general. As you know, I'm trying to always impress my parents till the day I die. But yeah, it's a work in progress. Oliver Berkman's definitely part of that work in progress. But yeah, that's the end of the story. How long was that? Okay, 40 minutes.
uh, Rita, that was just so wonderful. We got
So glad.
Brittany in the chat saying "so good" in capital letters, and like you haven't been able to see the chat feature throughout the duration of today, but let me just take a moment and let people say thank you.
That's so
'Cause
nice. You're so welcome. Thank you for
no,
being here and for like listening to my story. I did not take that for granted.
no, it's something really special, truly. Just I think there's just so much power. Before we go into the Q&A, because I don't want to sort of trivialize it by immediately starting asking you questions. I think there's just so much power in being seen, and there is the practical guidance that you gave at the end there, but just like you wouldn't have been able to see it, so I'm going to send it afterwards. But the amount of people who just sort of said, this is me, or I can resonate with this, or sharing experiences off the back of it, and well, hopefully you see it in the chat feature right now. These are people sort of saying these things, and that's truly special. Before we get into the Q&A, I want to give folks the opportunity to, if they haven't already sought you out, to find your LinkedIn right there, because you said let's chat. So
I mean it.
yeah, I believe it too, having had the benefit of hearing you speak. So thank you. Um, let's head into Q&A. There's 14 open questions from the community, but folks, if you would like to give a thumbs up to any questions that you would love asking, love me to ask, or if you'd like to add your own questions, then please do, and let's go from there. So I guess there is a caveat here at the beginning of the Q&A as well before we get started, which is like, Rita, you shared your story today, and I don't think either of us come from a perspective of like deep psychological sort of experience in sort of
Yes.
doing all this, but what we can share is experiences, and so hopefully that helps. So let's go in with the first question. So it says, how can you be a high performer and really care about your job, but still have balance and switch off to do the things for yourself and your family too? So I imagine part of the answer, based on what you've just said, is it's a work in progress. But I'd love to know,
Yeah.
as the question comes to you, what hits your mind?
Yeah. I there's a really famous quote from Steve Martin. He says, "Be so good they can't ignore you."
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, definitely sort of LinkedIn culture right now tries to paint entrepreneurship or becoming a creator as the only key to freedom. It's like the only way that you can actually control your time. But I do think when you are really good at your job, you're able to set boundaries, make more demands, and stand up for yourself more confidently and strongly than when you are not. So I definitely invest a lot in that, in being good at what I do. But I think the other thing, in addition to that, that's more macro. The other thing for me that I work a lot on is defining priorities, like thinking a lot about what is it that I am doing, that the team is doing, what will be the impact of this work, and spending enough time to understand like things that will actually move the needle
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to and that requires, as I said, like taking a step back from like the day-to-day churn and the day-to-day like content posting and like very fast cadence of like most modern marketing jobs. But I find that if you're able to identify the work that is very impactful and execute on that work incredibly well, you will most likely hit your goals and most likely be very successful. But and also in a way that you can also protect your time and spend time with your family and have very strong boundaries. Easier said than done, right?
For sure.
That's why I included the word courage there,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes a lot of courage. Like for me, even when I set priorities and I'm so sure that this is like the right strategy, if my manager comes to me and says like, we need to do this other thing, this is urgent, the CEO wants it. They wanted it yesterday, they wanted it a week ago. It's really difficult for me to say no in that moment. And I think we all fall into this trap. Like, what if you say no? Then your career might suffer. So it's hard. But I think if you work in a place where like there's a mutual understanding that you're really very good at your job and where your priorities are clear and hopefully respected, you have the best chance at strong like burnout prevention and successful career.
I love that. And
I don't know if that you can relate to that, Joe, at all. That makes
I,
sense.
I absolutely can. The priorities word, the fact that you've chosen to repeat that in your answer there, I think is so strong. And like, I guess I would relate this to my own world a little bit, at the moment. So, for me, the things that I care about in my life, business, family, not in this order, by the way, business, family, and fitness. And what I found for me was that I set myself at a high standard on each of those things. And when, say, for example, two were going well, but one wasn't going so well, I'd find myself beating myself up.
Mhm.
And to the point of your word about priorities, because I was putting each on an equal weighting, then when it came to actually like, being able to perform in each of those things, it wasn't actually physically possible for me to do that. Whether it was time, whether it was energy, whether it was commitment, or whatever it may be. And so it became an issue of prioritization for me. And so that, at the moment for me, like I have kids, and so I'm like, I'm just going to be a good dad, and I'm going to do my best for my
Yeah.
community. right now I can't run an ultra marathon, and that's fine, and so that third thing is not prioritized, but the other two are. And so like when you're using that word, I think priority is a huge part of that as an answer for me. And of course
I
then,
think so too. And someone asked in the chat, Katya, like, how do you learn to set priorities?
mhm,
I think if you work in an organization or in a role where your job is not being measured based on a KPI, where you don't have an assigned number that you're trying to hit, then that, to me, that is a red flag in a
mhm,
role because it means that you will not be able to control the amount of work that you do. You'll be in a role that has a strong task orientation. So success in a job without a KPI that's yours means that you are facing an endless to-do list.
that's
It'll never end. If you have a job where you have a KPI, you have to hit this many followers. You have to be able to increase the open rates for your emails to 50%, whatever that might be. That means that you are able to like much better control your time and your priorities. You might be able to hit that goal with like two projects that take up 20 hours a week. Or you might be able to have to work 60 hours a week for a couple of months in order to hit them. I mean, it depends, right? But I think like fundamental thing that is needed in order to set priorities is a goal, which is incredible. I think in talking to a lot of early career marketers, I oftentimes see that this doesn't exist in all organizations. And if you have a job that is task oriented with a massive to-do list, like that to-do list will not get any shorter.
That's so interesting. I'm reflecting. So it's interesting because and maybe this is part of the founder life, and stuff like that. But I definitely reflect that we kind of set ourselves goals, but we don't really,
Yeah.
But there's an interesting thing there, which is we've got a new starter starting next month, and there is a danger that if we don't set them goals, that they don't have the same privilege that we do as founders or responsibility. So that's really set something off in my brain. So thank you so much. That's
I'm so
that's
glad.
really really
A
great.
little firework, a tiny little
Yeah,
firework
yeah,
in
yeah. I really
there.
appreciate that. Let's go to the next question. So the next question likewise comes from anonymous who asks, "What do you do when you are burnt out in a toxic environment, but there's zero support? I know I need to leave, but it's hard to secure another job, and I don't have the energy to look." And I guess there is that practicality to these things. I think it's sometimes easy for people to say, you need to leave, but the market is where it is, the world is where it is, and so it's not always easy
Yeah.
for folks. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. And I think your caveat before this is very important. Like, I am not a doctor or a therapist or a mental health professional. I will say that as a result of my burnout episode, I started weekly therapy, and that
mm,
helped immensely for me. I should have actually also included that. That was like part of my recovery plan. But I will say, I could just, I guess, like from my own experience in the burnout story that I just shared, if I could go back in time, obviously I chose to quit.
mm,
But if I could go back in time, I think I would have spent a little bit more time reflecting on the real why this was happening, why I
mm,
was actually feeling this way. I'm not sure, of course, that I would have been able to see it at that point. But I was very quick to say, my manager doesn't understand me. I have too many projects on my plate. This is impossible. This whole job is impossible. This company is like, this is a chaos. I cannot handle this chaos.
mm,
And in like with time, I've become a little bit less reactive, I guess, in moments where I feel like I'm nearing burnout. I just turn more to self-reflection because often the it's a complex thing. Of course, it could be the company, it could be your boss, it could also be me and the
mm,
way that I'm managing certain situations. So um, that is always my first sort of like go-to. And again, it's not medical advice and it's not perfect. And for the whoever asked the question, I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this because it's so painful.
mm,
And as I mentioned to you earlier, Joe, it feels also there's a lot of shame associated with burnout, I think, because you think, okay, like this is a very small problem in the grand scheme of things. I should be grateful that I have a job. I should be grateful for all these things, but you still feel awful. So
mm.
I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. And I hope that helps at least a little bit.
Yeah, bang on. We did mention that before we went live, and also the thing that I responded to in this situation, but I think will hopefully resonate with folks is that it's incredibly normal to then feel guilt about feeling bad, which is
Yeah.
just this endless cycle of stuff, which is we know that by relative standards, a lot of us, even by virtue of being on this call, are sitting in a relatively, as in relatively against the global population, privileged position in some ways if you choose your metrics, and so feeling guilt about feeling bad is a real thing, but I think sometimes allowing ourselves forgiveness against that is just really all right, and in fact really important to do as well. So
Yeah.
thank you. Let's go to the next question from Amanda. Just an encouragement to that person who asked that question. If you'd like to get in touch, and if there's any way that we can help, then of course we'd love to. And I'm sure between the whole community, then there's some help that we can give in one way or another. But like you, I've also been on therapy, and it's really helpful.
Yeah.
So let's go to Amanda. So Amanda asks, Rita, as an optimistic person, did you feel like you had to put on the armor of being positive all the time? Did that drain you even more?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt I had to pretend that everything was okay
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And then I mean, when I said earlier that it affected my relationships, I think the main way that it did is that I just could not stop talking about it after work. Like at work, I would sort of like keep it all in, just keep it in, just pretend everything is fine. And then as soon as I stepped out that door, I would just be like, did you see this thing? Did you see that email? Did you see that Slack message? Can you believe this? Can you believe that? And even my husband, who is incredibly patient, generous, wonderful human, I think at one point just got very tired of it. I think, the partners and the friends of people who are experiencing burnout symptoms also have quite a burden. To be the listening ear to, I think, what at that time was quite a repetitive, like never ending litany of problems. So, yeah, I would say for sure that keeping it professional and keeping it in during the work days, and then even worse, sort of like feeling like I was emptying it all out, like shelling it all out at my friends and loved ones after work was definitely a hard part for myself and my loved ones.
I totally know what you mean. And, like, I've been open about my journey around like, anxiety and depression, and like there was like having those chats with my wife for maybe the thousandth time.
Yeah.
I feel bad and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Or I feel bad in face of the evidence, etc., etc. You start feeling guilty about that, right? So it's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
that thing that we
That's where
we
it was really nice to have a therapist
yeah.
because it
I
was a
agree.
person, yeah, that
I
you're,
agree.
for better or worse, like you're paying this person to listen to you.
Sure. No, absolutely. I fully agree. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is the right time to bring up this particular quote, but I just thought there was something so profound in you right towards the end saying, I care a lot about my job, but I care a lot about other things too. And I found that really, like, as a statement, like it's a sentence, but there is so much that goes into that. And so,
Yeah.
like, I just wanted to highlight that possibly in relation to that answer, but like also more widely how impressive I found that. And I think there's something that a lot of us can work towards. In if we're able to say that sentence out loud, I think that's pretty bloody incredible. So
I think so too. And I think, I don't know if you've heard this before in moments that you've struggled at work, but a lot of the people that gave me advice in that time would say, you care too much.
yeah,
Stop caring. Just stop caring. It's just a job.
mm,
And, you know, it was said with the best of intentions, right? It is a job, like by definition, I receive monetary compensation to do this job. But
mm,
I think part of like who I am as a person is that I care about where I spend my time.
mm,
And a job means more to me than just like a paycheck. I've always felt that way. And some people don't. I have friends who are like, clock it in, clock it out. And I enjoy my life is what happens outside of work, but absolutely not me. I want to work and feel a certain way and like what I do. So for me, it's like that binary of like, don't care at all, just like phone it in forever. And like your job is everything. When you have a passion for something, you should do that forever and you'll be happy forever. Those are the options that are presented to us. And like I cannot relate to either of those. I think it's both. Like as I said, and I guess you said afterwards, it's just true. Like I love my job, but I love other things. And that's okay. You can love both. You don't need to hate your job.
I fully agree. I hope people don't mind me responding to your questions. Usually I just ask them, but I resonate with this so much. Is that like last week I had a conversation with a leader who I really admire, who had that attitude that you were able to, uh, you spoke about there, where they were like, you know, I care about this job right now, but if it goes away, it's all right. I'll find something else, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember coming back to my a coach that I work with and sort of saying, "Oh, I quite admire that, because I can't do that. Like I really, really, really care about this thing, and I think about it a lot." And the coach sort of came back and said, that's them, and this is you, and you don't need to be that person.
No.
You may admire that, but actually, the reason you do what you do, the reason you care about what you do, the reason you get where you get to, is because you do care. And so, like, you can admire that in other people, but you don't have to be that person.
Yeah.
You is enough. And you are doing all right, type of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I always often think of artists whose work is a reflection of their being and who they are. That's one end of the spectrum. Like I'm not there, but my work, yeah, but I think you probably can relate to this. Your work is in some way a reflection of you, and it matters in that way. It's more than just like a paycheck.
absolutely, bang on, bang on. Let's take one more, Rita, and then we'll close out today's session. So the last one that has the most upvotes is a little bit of the crux of what you were speaking about today. But how do you stop working harder and more when all the people above you are constantly working out of hours?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, it goes back from a very tactical standpoint. It really goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about owning a number and setting very clear priorities that will help you move that number.
Hmm.
Ultimately, if you are in a job where your goal is to drive 10 sales and you drive 10 or you drive 11, there will be no questions about what time you're working, how many hours, what are your projects. I think, the problems come when like we don't have a clear KPI and then clear priorities to help us get there. And so it leads to quite a lot of churn. It's not perfect. I mean, I certainly I've been in jobs where I've been able to manage this, and then in jobs where I just haven't been able to because the pressure from the top is just too much. And ultimately, if the pressure is so much that like you are being demanded to be online at 11 p.m.,
Hmm.
that's like a cultural thing about this company that you're very unlikely in a marketing role to be able to change.
Hmm.
And so those are the things that I would recommend based on my own experience to really reflect on, like what is it? Is it my own? Am I lacking the courage to like set the boundary? Is it the fact that I don't have a clear KPI and clear priorities that I'm communicating to my manager? And so they're freaking out and like throwing all this work at me. Or is it just that the culture of the company is to work 24/7?
Hmm.
And like depending on the answer to that question, I think you can make a decision, a determination of like what is it that you need to do. In some cases, you need to leave. I really believe
Hmm.
that. In some cases, like there's no other way. Like, but I think in many cases, I think we have as employees in a company, as again with Steve Martin, as what Steve Martin said, if you bring value to an organization, you have more power than you think.
Love that. Love that so much. Uh, Rita, thank you.
Thank
What
you.
a soulful, enriching hour. You're so appreciated, folks. If you haven't already dropped Rita a message to say thank you, then there's the opportunity right there with the QR code on screen. But truly, truly wonderful, and thank you for sharing so openly and honestly. It's like it's really profound. What a session. So thank you.
Thank
Um,
you, Joe, for having me, and thank you, everyone, for your attention and your time.
let's go with
You could be doing many other marketing things, and you are here. I do not take that for granted.
It's just wonderful, truly. Um, with all that said, just one last shout out before we go. If you would like to attend Plannable session later this week, please do. QR code is on screen, and also a big thank you to our sponsors. They make it possible so we can have these conversations and we can bring these things to you. So, with all that said, we'll see you next week. And thank you to everyone. I haven't said this yet, but thank you to everyone in the chat as well for making it absolutely incredible. Really appreciate you all. All that said, hopefully see you next week for something brand new from the Marketing Meetup, a workshop session rather than this webinar format. And yeah, I hope to see you there. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.